I have another terrible question for you. So I read Martel's book on the Catholic Church about homosexuality in the Vatican. And it's very contentious book, let's say, written by a gay man who claims that homosexuality is extraordinarily common in the Vatican.
It is.
And that the kinds of relationships that you describe between older men and younger men are common in that culture as they're common in the rest of the culture.
Yes, they are. So I've written a book on the subject too. And I can tell you for a fact that both of those things are true. It's called the Lavender Mafia in the Vatican. It is for those viewers who don't know, it is a cabal of not just gay bishops, but specifically progressive left-wing gay bishops.
Yes.
And my book was a little bit more politically focused than his. My book was drawing attention to the fact that the same people who want to water down the liturgy, who want for divorcees to be able to receive communion and want gay people to be whatever, they're the same people who've been covering up child abuse in the church. And it seems that the same people who've been doing the child abuse and covering it up are also the people who are most aggressively pushing for progressive reform of the Catholic liturgy and of Catholic practice. And this, of course, resonates with what we know from other industries, doesn't it? Just like Hollywood, just like the press, just like the academy. The people who are most aggressively pushing for progressive free-for-all sexual liberation are the people with the ugliest and most depraved skeletons in the closet. The rest of us are quite normal. So my book was more about that. But I can tell you that it's absolutely true. The mistake that the Catholic Church has made, and I remain a Catholic despite the terrible state of the Catholic Church.
Yes, and all the other contradictions in your life.
They've never bothered me. They've never scared me. I'm not afraid of that. I'm quite excited by that because I look forward to a day when I might either get closer to a resolution or be happy with not finding one. I can imagine Ben Shapiro would be kept awake at night by this, but I'm not, because I don't need everything in my world to form into a perfect, into like some sort of like Kantian or Wittgensteinian superstructure where everything has its right place and and everything is perfectly organized and all the dependent things are in the right. That's not what human beings are like. That's not what we are. We're much, much more complex and messy than that. And I'm very much looking forward to 40, 50 years of exploring my own ludicrous, internal nonsense. But I remain a Catholic, but the issue that the church has had, the mistake that the church has made is turning a blind eye, as the church would put it, to sin, turning a blind eye to rampant gay sex in a vocation that is supposed to be celibate, supposed to be chaste.
And to associate that hypothetically,
the way that
Martel's claim with the proclivity to cover up the child's sexual abuse because of it, which is his most radical claim, I would say.
I don't know if he's wrong about that. What I would say is the way the church would put it is, if you make room for one sin, others will follow, right? So what that means in practical terms for the Catholic Church is, because the priesthood is somewhere where lots of gay men go and a blind eye is routinely turned to their sexual peccadillos, even if it's just with each other and there's nothing non-consensual or abusive going on, because it's a sexual free-for-all, because it's the kind of place where supposedly transgressive or forbidden things happen routinely with no consequence, that it becomes an institution that attracts other kinds of people who have other things to hide, like pedophiles. Where are you going to go if you have some kind of psychiatric dysfunction or whatever it is like that? You're going to go somewhere that routinely overlooks or ignores sexual wrongdoing. Of course you are. So that's what the church, that's what Christians mean when they say, you let one sin and others will follow. They don't just mean it in the sense of personal behavior, like if you let yourself do one thing, you'll let yourself do others. But it also works in institutions too. And of course, the lefties will say the reason that all of these problems happen in the Catholic Church is that priests are required to be celibate. The opposite's true. They haven't been celibate for a very long time, and that's what's created the problem. Because there's now an entrenched left-wing gay mafia that effectively runs the Catholic Church, that has engaged in the systematic cover-up of child abuse so as to protect its own power. And that's about as bad as it gets, in terms of, global institutions who have lost their way. That is as bad as it gets. I want a black pope because I want there to be a doctrinally conservative, because all of the Catholics in Africa are like pre-Vatican II. They're serious Catholics, and it will make life very difficult for progressives accusing a black pope from Africa of being a racist and a sexist, because he actually wants Catholic doctrine to remain Catholic doctrine. But the present pope is basically at the head. He is not himself a homosexual, as far as we know, but he does sit at the head of this lavender mafia, and he is propped up by people like Cormac Murphy O'Connor from England and Wales, Vincent Nichols, and all the rest. So all these other aging 60, 70-year-old liberal cardinals who are products of the 60s, who are soft on communism, and what my book was trying to show was that the soft on communism thing is entwined with the abuse, with the wrongdoing, with everything. They're the same people doing everything. So Theodore McCarrick, who has the distinction of being the world's only ex-cardinal, because Francis had to remove his cardinalcy from him, had to degrade him is the technical term. He was Francis's envoy to China. And he was the one who put the deal together with Francis to allow the Chinese state to participate in the choice, in choosing Catholic bishops. I mean, this hasn't happened since like Gregory VII. The Catholic Church has been ferocious about choosing its own bishops, but they handed selection of the bishops over to the Communist Party in China, knowing that Catholics are routinely persecuted, and killed in China, because they never met a socialist they didn't like. And it's that particular 60, 70-year-old child of the 60s, aging hippie liberal that lives in another planet from the rest of us and is still thinking, if only there's some lawnmower, Oklahoma. If only socialism were tried one more time, perhaps it would be okay this time. That's the world these people live in. And they also
that's in your book, Pope?
So it's called Diabolical, how Pope Francis betrayed clerical abuse victims like me and why he has to go. It's called Diabolical. So but anyway, okay. I talk about that in the book, so I'm not here to book the book, but no, it's very interesting how the same people who are the far leftists, who are pushing for church doctrine to be watered down, which has the effect of emptying the pews, because when people go to church, they want the fire and brimstone. They go to be told what to do. They want the Bible. They want Jesus. They don't want climate change.
Right.
They don't, they don't want a bishop talking to them. And I'm not making this up. There are seminaries now where the seminarians are starting to issue. They're starting to give sermons on toxic masculinity. This is a church that has no manly men left in it.
Yeah. Every
man in that church is a homo. There are no men left in the congregations. There are no heterosexual men left in the clergy. And this is a church that thinks it has a too many men problem. This is a church that, and the reason that this subject interested me, in addition to my faith, is that this is another arena in which the loss of manliness and masculinity and the loss of a proper appreciation of the heroic masculine virtues has led to chaos and disaster. Because no true father, by which I mean the sorts of fatherhood that priests are supposed to give up having children in order to embark upon, no spiritual leader with integrity would stand by and watch children being abused and cover it up. This is something that gay people do because they think what they do is wrong, so they're happy to cover for somebody else who's doing something wrong too. A father, a real father, doesn't sit idly by while children are being abused. He takes steps to stop it, and he punishes the people who have done wrong. Okay, that's the righteous indignation and outrage of a true father, and that appreciation of it's right and proper to hate the hateful, and we should be outraged about.
Right. Well, and you said that's part of what you've learned over the last couple of years.
Right, but that heroic manly virtue is something that has been sort of systematically wiped out of the Catholic Church, just like it's been wiped out of other places in public life.
Yeah,
Like it's gone from journalism, like it's gone from the academy, and it's had results that everybody knows about in all those different arenas. So it was interesting to me writing the book, finding that most of the problems, most of the things that are happening in the Catholic Church, most of the problems the Church has got itself into, basically boil down to there being no men. It's all women and gays. And the vast majority of the child abuse scandal and all of the other things that are wrong with the Catholic Church are a product of the Church losing its connection to masculinity and simply having no men left in it.
Oh, good. Well, good. There's nothing controversial about any of that. So that's quite a relief.